Salutations all and welcome back to another kitchen adventure. This is going to hopefully be a very short video for you. Just want to get something out there. So the meal that we're going to create today is a little bit special. Why is that? Well, it helped me get the current position for my day job. In the industry, we have what we call a basket or a tasting. So when you go to interview at a place, particularly with restaurants, hotels, things of that line, not really for fast food, but for when we're really doing some serious cooking, we want to see what you're capable of. I mean, you can put whatever on a resume, and believe me, we have seen it all. But I don't know what you're capable of until we put you to the test. So what happens is they call you in, you do your interview, and they say, all right, we're going to give you a mystery basket. So for the fans of the Food Network, Chopped. That is what we do when we want to go and apply for a job. We are handed items. We don't know what we're going to get, what mixture of weird things they might throw at us, and we've got to make it something of it. Sometimes they're very particular and they say, hey, I want an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert based on the ingredients that you have. Or there'll be specific ingredients that you have to use from that basket. So again, for my fans of the Food Network, Chopped is what I'm speaking of. This is what we do in real life. So today, we're going to do a pecan crusted pork chop. We're going to top that with a nice stewed tomato that's going to be cooked in maple syrup. Yeah, I mean, it's why the South will never rise again. Let's get into it. Alright, so first thing I just wanted to show, I did try to take the time to measure this time so we can be a little more accurate. So I've got my tablespoon and my teaspoon. So we're looking at our seasoning blend here, and I'm going to make sure I put these measurements down in the little thing there, descriptions. So, this is what we're using: a little kosher salt, some brown sugar. Mine's rock hard, so I had to chop it down on the food processor. A little thyme, no Morris Day. Sage, ground sage. You can also do fresh. Just always remember, if you're going to use fresh over dry, the amounts will be a little bit different. Black pepper, my favorite ingredient, garlic. For the breading, you're going to need some Nilla wafers or graham crackers work as well. Remember, I know it's going to sound crazy, but it's something, I'll explain at the end. Anyway, I'm going to chop those down. I'm going to use a cup of the vanilla wafers and a cup of the pecan pieces. And I went ahead and bought the really small pieces. I didn't want to have to do any extra work in getting that ready to go. For our breading station, we'll also need some flour and a little cornstarch. Alright, last thing we're going to need, we got that work. That's gold right there, baby. For the sauce, we're going to use some tomato. I'm going to use a quarter of yellow onion there, a quarter of a yellow onion diced up. And, of course, you knew it was coming. Lastly, you're going to need a little syrup. Really doesn't matter the brand, whatever you like, a little maple syrup. Alright, so we're going to get started with the pork chops. Now, these are what they call double cut center pork chops, or double center cut pork chops. A little thicker, a little heavier. I like the bone on there. Remember, the bone equates to flavor, and it also helps to stand them up when I put them in the oven. The reason I stand them up in the oven is because a conventional oven heats from the bottom, and you'll see once we have it breaded, we don't want one side to be overly cooked, so we'll stand them up. So we're going to graciously and generously season these up with that seasoning blend that we made. Don't be afraid. Sop it all up. For you northerners, sop is just a word to, it's like to absorb. It's a biscuit terminology. But anyway. Alright, so we've got our flour and our cornstarch mixed together. I like to add a little bit of the cornstarch. I feel like it helps to lighten it, so it's just not all heavy flour. We're going to season that mixture with a little bit of the same seasoning that we put on the pork chop. There's nothing worse than biting into something deliciously fried that tastes like nothing. So we like to season our food from top to bottom, right? Alright, there's that liquid gold right there. I know everybody's running out to buy chickens. Good luck with that. And we've got our pecan and Nilla wafer mixture. And it's really simple, just like you would do, anything else that you're frying. You want to hit it up with a little bit of the dry, and there's going to be a little bit of argument, I'm sure, between whether you should go wet dry or dry wet dry or whatever. However you feel comfortable doing it, this is how I'm doing it. This is how I've always done it, and it worked for me. I'm not going to fight with you, Grandma. Let it go. All right, so you want to make sure that pork chop's nicely coated in that flour mixture. Same thing when you hit it with the egg. Now, once you go to the pecan mixture, depending on how many you're doing, one thing you don't want to do is to mash the pork chop down into the breading. For whatever reason, whenever I do it that way, when you go to fry it and move it out of the pan, it almost always will fall off. So just let it naturally adhere to the pork chop. And we're going to rinse and repeat with this second one here. And because these are double thick, double cut pork chops, they are thicker, so the cook time is going to be a little longer. So once we get these into a pan, we're actually going to be very careful about that, about the heat levels. You don't want super high heat because you're going to end up burning your crust before the pork chop even begins to start cooking, and we definitely don't want to do that. So I've got the oven also set at 365 for this. So 365 degrees. I've got our potatoes already in there going. Boom, look at that. I mean, it just looks like a cookie, a thick meat cookie. Anyway, my favorite dish in the house, my cast iron, nice and hot. You can tell by the waves of that oil there. It's about a quarter cup, or a little less. Yeah, about a quarter cup of oil there. Oil of your choosing. This is olive oil today, just for that delicious richness of the fattiness of an olive oil. And you're just going to let it go. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? I use that word a lot, but it really is. You're just going to let it go. And we're looking for that GBD, right? That golden brown deliciousness. So we're going to add some of this great southern oppression there. That's what we're going to keep this, how we're going to keep the sauce from rising. That's butter. Feel free to omit if you choose. I mean, we just can't be friends moving forward, but it's okay, right? Quality over quantity. Or is it the other way around? Anywho, so we're just going to let these things go for a while. And I know you're going to want to pick them up every few seconds to check, but please do not. Because you want the egg to go ahead and cook and tighten and make a nice seal on that. You want that sugar that's in that mix to start to caramelize and start to hold that crust together. Now, due to the magics of editing, it looks like I just went ahead and rushed that. I promise those were down for several minutes before we flip them. And then the same thing, we're just looking for that golden brown deliciousness on both sides. And this is again why I love the bone. I'm going to stand these bad boys up so that way I know that they are heating all the way around, and we're going to pop those in the oven. All right, pork chops are in the oven, so we're going to start working on our sauce. So I'm doing a tablespoon of oil there into my saute pan. Let that get nice and hot. Once it's up to temp, we're going to add our onion. And I particularly use yellow onion for this just because as they caramelize, they tend to get a little bit sweeter. And I know you're saying, well, you could just get sweet onion, but for me, I feel like that's too sweet for this dish. But that's a personal preference. So after the onions have started to get a little bit of color, we're going to go in with our garlic. And we're just going to let that bad boy ride until we get a good amount of color on those onions. And once you're satisfied with that, you're going to go in with your tomatoes. And remember when we're making this sauce, the tomatoes, it's mostly water, so they are going to let off a lot of juice. And so if you want it to be thicker, we're going to have to do something a little bit different. You have to let it cook a little longer, and you can even hit it with a little starch. But I promise you, leave it be. It'll be great. So, all right, so as the tomatoes have been going for a little while, we're going to hit it with our syrup. And like I said, the tomatoes will begin to let their juices go and make a delicious sauce. So this one's been cooking for a while. I like to cook it until the tomatoes get nice and soft. So it's going to be a personal preference thing. If you want your tomatoes to be a little firmer, hey, by all means, you can cut that. But I'm not a huge fan of tomatoes like this, so I need them to be as easy to eat as possible. All right, so we've let that go for a while our pork chops were in on a nice low simmer. So sauce is done. Pork chops are ready to come out. And let's plate this as I check my camera angles. Those magical potatoes that I was talking about. I like to use golden potatoes most of the time for my mash. They're just such a delicious and buttery, creamy, if you will, flavor and texture to them versus an Idaho or something like that. Gotta have our veggies. Not really sure why I feel like I need to be very delicate with the food that I plate up at home. I don't know if it's just a force of habit, but anywho. And the piece de resistance, our pork chops. I mean, look at that. Delicious. Great crust on that. You've got that salty sweet, right? We've got that savory aspect of it. And then we're going to hit it again with that salty sweet savoriness right on top. And that's it. That's the pecan crusted pork chop. Goes well on chicken too. I hope you guys enjoy it.